Right. I'm so excited to introduce our community today to Don Weatherwax, a professional in the sports and nutrition field for more than a decade. And as a nutrition expert and athletic trainer, Don works with athletes of all ages. Don has seen firsthand the role that nutrition can actually play in enhancing athletic performance. And that's why we are thrilled to get your expertise today, to pick your brain, your specialty that you have landed in. Welcome, Dawn. So excited to have you.
Thank you. I probably should have done this better so people could see food behind me. So I just switch around. Is that funny? This is me. Like, this is my brain. And I even have. Anyways, now you can't even see it because I haven't drafted.
You're good.
This is me on, I promise people out there, this is me on fuel, I guess. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of your podcast and to just share the nutrition knowledge.
Yes, just so spoiled. And I feel like parents and athletes who are about to tune in today, it's going to catch everybody. I know that I was sitting in a meeting and you started speaking and the parents' ears perked up. It was like, ooh, we need more. And I really think that the athletes feel that way as well. So my first question for you is that you're this expert in the sports nutrition realm. And can you just brag on yourself for a minute and kind of let the community understand why would it be different to go to you versus like if a pediatrician referred an athlete out to just a regular dietitian or just a regular personal trainer?
Yeah, well, to share with people, your first analogy too is if you were going to see a doctor or let's say a lawyer, it's easier. If you had, you're not going to see a lawyer for taxes versus corporate versus criminal. We just all have our own specialty. And a lot of sports, not all, the majority of athletes are 18 or under. So that definitely creates a different atmosphere of science and knowledge to base on kids or athletes that are growing and trying to mature optimally, but also to do this awesome goal or dream that they have that requires a lot of their body. And so many people don't understand the fueling that it takes to grow and grow when they're supposed to grow and gain lean when they're supposed to gain lean, and then also fuel the sport. And the way sports have gone, it's really intense if they're serious or their bodies just have a lot of wear and tear, but they're not optimizing the work or optimizing growth and all their hard work. And then they're not, they're falling short of some of the goals and dreams that they might have set forth. But it definitely is different. And yes, like you mentioned, I work with college or pro athletes or people who are just into their health and wellness, but each person is different. And you could contest to that. It doesn't matter even in the same family, that we all have different needs, and we're trying to fine tune those different needs to just be optimally healthy, to academically excel, and to reach those performance and dreams that some athletes are trying to work towards.
No, so well said. Thank you. I'm going to just keep diving right in. Are you ready to hit this hard today?
I talk to people out there, people who know me, just like shush. So I try to.
Oh gosh,
just
no.
leave the conversation and we'll go.
It's perfect. So one of my first bullet points for us here is the idea, like you said, everything's very individualized, that the athlete could be following, and I kind of teach more of this like intuitive eating. I work more with adults, hunger, fullness type. But for an athlete, if they're really listening to their hunger, fullness cues, we heard that they're probably full before their nutrients are actually being met. And I know that immediately a couple parents were like, oh, that's so interesting. Can you speak over that for a minute?
Yeah. So we're taught, right? Hey, intuitive eating, which it is valid. The problem is we have different sports and we have different genetics. And for instance, cross country. People tend to find what they're good at, but usually their genetics are kind of behind what they're good at. A lot of times cross country, why do people migrate? They usually like cardio, they like to run, they're just really good at endurance. And they find a home that they excel in. But that type of athlete has a tendency to be on the lower end of the percent weight tile on the height and weight chart. And that when any one athlete is on the lower end of the weight percentile, so 5%, 10% weight tile, percentile, to me, that's always a red flag, because in the medical world, and nothing against physicians, it's just hey, as long as you continue to grow, we're good, right? As long as then they don't really think much about it. But here's some facts. We have way more athletes or, kids or teens on focused medicine, and that focused medicine makes them not hungry. That's a problem, because if they're already on the lower end of the weight percentile and now they're not hungry, some research is showing they could be 2 inches shorter than what they're supposed to be at the end of all of this. And it's not because the medicine stunts growth, it stunts appetite. Therefore, they're not eating enough to match what they need to grow. And eventually those growth plates will close. And I think if most parents knew that, they'd be like, well, I need to really think about this or be more intentional about it. And would say they're not on focused medicine. It's just that this group, they just get full. They just listen. They go, oh, I'm full. Therefore, I don't need more than what my body needs. And I just warn those parents in the sports, especially cross country, that doesn't really match. And the other thing that happens is it's survival mode. The body doesn't understand this world when it comes to fuel. And let's break down what I mean by fuel is food is a calorie, and then calorie is heat, and then heat is energy, and energy is fuel. So again, food is a calorie. That's what most people, fuel is calories, but I like to say fuel. So food is a calorie is heat, heat is energy, and energy is fuel. So the body doesn't need eyeballs and ears to know how much fuel we are burning or how much fuel we are consuming, because it already knows the answer, because we're living. That if we're living, we're breathing, that's metabolism. That's your fuel that you're burning just to stay alive, because we need to sleep to stay alive. We need to fuel to stay alive. We need to hydrate to stay alive. We cannot do without those 3 things. So we forget that. We forget right now our heart's pumping and we're breathing. We just kind of go with our day, but that takes fuel to do that. And then it already knows what you're consuming that has a fuel source. So at some point, if the output's here in activity and then the input's here and that gap is big, it doesn't know what century you live in. You could be, if you have kids, the crudes where you're, like looking for dinosaur eggs and things like that. It doesn't know if you're a farmer, that your crops, you have crops, or a cowboy or an Indian, or there's no buffalo, or there's no fish. It senses you're in danger. And once it starts to do that, it goes into survival mode. And it's pretty miraculous if you think about it, because I try to tell people, think of a time when you're starving or you're really hungry, and just imagine you have no food and you have no money, like literally, and you have to stay hungry until you eat. That is we would have a whole different society with hoarding food, because you would have to eat and fulfill that hunger signal for it to go away. But the body actually makes you hungry to tell you need to fuel for most of us if the signal's working right. So therefore it says, wow, I need to help you through that. I'm going to shrink your stomach so you get full faster. And then this group just gets they just listen to that. They go, well, I'm full, so therefore I'm eating enough. Well, the body was reacting to that. You're not eating enough, so it shrinks it, and then it will slow down your metabolism. And then you're more apt to not putting on muscle when you're supposed to. And, because it's just trying to keep you alive for months and months, and it can't. Numbers don't add up. But if we go the other end, let's say baseball or volleyball, You know, you could have ones that are on the leaner side of the weight percentile, and you can have ones that are on the other end of the percentile of weight, but that's a power sport. And a lot of that could be lean weight. And that's why it's good to know body comp, because you want to know how lean your athlete is. And then you build on top of that. But sometimes we struggle. Some people struggle on the other spectrum where it's hard for them to get full. So they just eat more, but the signals are not quite matching. So quality 100% makes a difference with that, but also they're very young and trying to learn hunger and fullness cues, so they don't really match up very well, especially because they're always growing and developing, and that makes us different from the rest of the population.
Right. And we're going to come back to the growing piece, because I think for especially athletes at this junior high and high school level, it's a big thing that's talked about, like, am I done growing? And am I going to continue growing? Do you have examples where you're like, you finally fed somebody, they finally got the nutrients and the fuel they needed, and you did see a difference?
Yeah. So there's so many stories, but there's a couple of stories. One story comes with a female, this is performance and body composition change. She was, she's 12. This is 12. This kind of changed everything for me. This was pre-COVID. And, she was 5'1" and 95 pounds, which for folks, that's like 105 plus or minus 10%. So she was right. She was fine, but she was really tired. And swimming is big in this area in Cincinnati, Ohio. We're just a metropolis of great sports in this area. Literally, if you looked us up, great football. I mean, we're in the nation, great volleyball, soccer, softball, swimming, tennis, cross country. We're fast in this area. But because she's swimming a lot, just fatigued, but she was not eating enough. She was eating about 1,800 units of fuel, which that might sound like a lot for a 12-year-old who's weighing around 95 pounds, but she wasn't eating enough protein and the right mix. We do not have to be perfect. It is not about diets. It's about guidelines. It's about making small changes if we have to get there. It is nutrition. If it was easy, none of us would have a job. But it's not easy, and it's not easy within the same family because we all have different genetics and different needs, and that just makes it even more complex. But she actually needed closer to 25 to 2,800 units of fuel, if you can imagine that, at age 12. Why do we know that? One, calculations, but two is I have a device called that it measures your metabolic rate, which really just means what do you burn at rest within 24 hours if you just slept. And that's your resting metabolic rate. And so based off of that, and then knowing how much she swam, I knew she was not eating enough. And then the other thing that I have is called muscle sound. And I'm actually at my office. So it's this is an ultrasound head, and this is a pound of muscle. And then you just put it on the top of the leg, and then that will measure the fuel in the muscle. And so the fuel in her muscle was low. And what people don't realize, if the fuel in the muscle is low, you have to go slower, because fuel is carbs. You want to store carbs and burn fat. This is where people get confused. They all think carbs are bad, and they're not bad. It's just that we need to live, but these kids are growing, and growing takes that fuel out of the muscle. And this is where that's why it's complex. And if it goes low, you won't grow. Really low, it can't do the activity, because that activity takes a lot of movement, and then they won't grow when they're supposed to grow, because the activity is taking all the fuel, and so it slows it down. And I always joke, when do kids mainly grow? Is the summertime. It's not just it's because they're not in school, so they can snack more, and then they can eat more, and they can sleep more. That's why they're growing, because they can actually get more fuel, and then they're sleeping more, and they can grow. But that's why you see it a lot in the summertime. But that's what happened. And we got the fuel in and got the right nutrients at the right times. She had personal best 9 months in a row from the minute we started working together in every swim meet. Not every event, but several personal bests at every swim meet for 9 months in a row. And she grew about a half of an inch to an inch. But the crazy thing is, because of getting the right amount of proteins and fuel at the right time, her body put on 10 pounds of lean and lost 10 pounds of fat. That blew my mind, because that was not even my thought. That's not when I'm like, hey, she's 12. It's just that 100% says what we eat in the right amounts, in like enough protein. She loved carbs and not enough protein. That the body can't do what it is by just counting even calories. It's the right fuel at the right times, and protein timing and enough protein is huge. And that just, I knew it, but now I had proof. And so then I go, no, you start younger. The younger you understand this, who doesn't want their kid to be as tall as they're supposed to be? You can't make someone taller. And that's the thing. You can't make someone taller, but you can make them shorter by your own choices. But you can't increase a growth plate.
Right.
It's just what it is, right? That's the
right.
thing.
But you're not stagnating it. You're getting the max out of what that potential was, which is important.
It is.
And I heard you on a podcast with a Miami grad, and he had stated that the way that you practice, Dawn, and you mentioning you have all these tools where it shows, it's that proof word that you said, it shows what the muscle energy looks like. It shows what the actual metabolic burn looks like. He was saying that was a game changer for him, because then he could see it. It wasn't just somebody scribbling on a piece of paper doing an equation. It was, no, this is you. This is your body. This is what you're working with. And I just think for any, again, parent listening going, my kid is obviously not listening to me. Hopefully they'll listen to somebody like a Dawn, but then to have some proof to lay out in front of them. I do think that your tools are priceless.
Science speaks louder than me, and then I'll even turn it. I have a bod pod, but I was like, who's gonna see? Isn't this nice? There's my bod pod. And that it's just air displacement. So you could be 8 years old and sit in that thing. You could be pregnant and sit in that thing. That's how safe that thing is, because it's just air. But it does guide. And some people will question, should you really know body composition, or is that a negative thing to measure body fat? But I go, parents know their athletes, and if they're old enough, the athletes know themselves. And I go, for most, it's, you use it in a positive manner, and it scientifically helps guide someone where they need to go. And the nutrition, how is the nutrition working, and is the training working? Because again, if you're putting all these hours into something and you're just going like this and praying that you're going to get to this goal because you did all the work and you showed up 150%, that's still dreaming, and it's not scientifically maximizing what is capable. It's just doing what you're told, but you don't really know if it's working. And so what I do here is, it's not just about eating, it's about eating to meet your health, to grow, to build lean when you're supposed to gain lean. That 100% affects academics. Like, all my athletes usually do better in school. Not that they were bad in school. It's just they didn't realize, hey, this is fuel for my brain, and now I can focus even better. And so then I'm not wasting so much time. And then they find that it's just easier, and they're even not falling asleep in class, or just struggling to stay awake sometimes because, one, maybe they're not getting enough sleep. And we both know, you can't override lack of sleep. I don't care what you eat or drink, you can't override that. But you can, like, they just excel. And then all of a sudden they buy in because they feel better, and they're doing better, and they're not as tired, and they recover more, and their legs aren't as heavy, or they just start to see all their hard work working. If they're trying to gain muscle now, it's not like, well, I did the work, I'm lifting, why isn't it not working? I'm like, well, if you're not fueling properly, it won't matter. If you just throw more protein at, I see that with a lot of males. They just want to eat more and more protein. And I like, okay, well, you have this amount of lean weight, and we're going to spread, so much protein every 3 to 4 hours, 5 to 6 times a day. And you don't need more protein than that. Now you need to fuel the muscle, because protein is not going to fuel and turn into a carb. So if you don't fuel and eat right and eat healthy fat's like nuts, seeds, peanut butter, because it's the other thing. Healthy fat burns, it decreases inflammation, it helps the brain, it helps the gut. Saturated fat is solid at room temperature. You know all this. You probably talk about it in all your other podcasts.
No, you just keep going.
Saturated fat, a lot of people think fat's fat, but saturated fat, you want 10% or less, which it's kind of easy math. Well, I make it easy math where if you need 3,000 units of fuel, because you guys, here's the kicker. A 12-year-old girl is in her major growth spurts. She needs minimum, no fuel. No athlete needs less than 2,000 units of fuel at that age. But in swimming, the average is 25 to 2,800 minimum at age 12 if they're swimming. Cross country in high school, the minimum female needs 25 to 2,800 units of fuel. The average male at age 11 or 12, probably still around 25 to 28. But I've had a female athlete at age 12 who needed 3,500 to 4,000 units of fuel. Here's why. Her mom's 6 foot. She has a lot of growing to do. So, some people stop at 5'4", but this girl needed to get to 6 foot. So she needs more fuel than somebody else because she has so much more bone she has to develop and grow. So height, and that does make a difference. And if you can get there sooner, that's a competitive advantage. If you can get more muscle sooner, that's a competitive advantage. I always use Katie Ledecky because most know Katie, even if they don't follow swimming, is she was 6 foot. Most of these girls are 6 foot if they're that high by 14. If you slow that down, and then lean. She's lean. She is so lean. And I mean lean like small. She's like compact in her body. That's a competitive advantage. So the sooner you can get there, if that's where it's supposed to be, then that's what's going to excel you as well. So there's so many facets. So that's the one girl. And then there was a male baseball player. I never met him at face to face. So my testing, we can do tape measurements. I have an academy that walks you through it sometimes. But he was 13 and he was 4'10", and he goes, I want to play college baseball / I would like to go to the major leagues. And he played first base. Now, the average first baseman in Major League Baseball has 195 pounds of lean weight. Total weight is usually 220, 230 in Major League Baseball first base. This kid weighs 98 pounds. Okay, that puts him at 8th grade or 7th or 8th grade. I can't remember. We had 6 years. Okay, 6 years. I'm like, you need to gain 100 pounds of lean weight in 6 years. Not technically, because you can do it in college, but once you start thinking like that, most people think, well, once they hit puberty, they're going to put on this size. I go, he's not going to put on 100 pounds of lean weight in 6 years. This isn't going to happen for him if you don't start thinking about it now, not at 17, not at 18, because he's underweight. He's not eating enough. We started off at 3,000. The child, I'm not kidding, he needed 4,000 to 4,500 units of fuel a day. Think about a 98-pound kid needing 4,000 to 4,500 units of fuel. But here's the kicker. There's many things I'm leaving out because I would just take up that on him, is he grew 6 inches in 6 months once we started.
Oh my gosh.
And he put on 20 pounds of lean weight. It's about 6 pounds per inch. For guys, about 5 pounds per inch. For females, roughly, give or take. But think about that. That's how much, because he was that far behind, the body was waiting for him. It was sitting there going, I can't grow because you're not fueling enough, but I need this much to get there. And it just morphed. And so he's not going to be 6'4". Taller kids are taller earlier. But now he's like almost back on track. So when we took 20 pounds in 6 months, that's insane. That doesn't usually happen, but that's what I see. And he knew what to eat and when. And again, we are not talking about following diets. It's about fueling. And then if I have picky eaters, I just try to really listen to what people eat. And we're not always going to be perfect. It's okay. We just go, let's just start slowly tackling it and we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm going to take you outside of your realm a little bit for a minute, because when you're When the kiddos are hearing this type of talk, I'm curious your conversations around, do you see panicked feelings or looks in your athlete's eyes of you're asking me to eat what? Or you're asking my calories to go up? Like, how do
Mhm.
you have that conversation to calm them that like the promise is, again, it's lean, it's gonna fuel, like talk us through if we were the athlete sitting across from you with panicked eyes, what would that
I like,
conversation look
yeah,
like?
and I'm always glad when the parents sit next to me because you always want to make sure they hear the right message. But if that athlete he was at 4,045, please understand we didn't go from like 25 to 45 in one day. It was like, oh, we're going to do 3,000 to 35. And I do customize menus. I'm still one of those that I do if they want to do that level in my academy. There's menus in there to use as guidelines because then it makes sense of how to mix your macros, carbs, fats, and proteins in the like a more well-rounded way to maximize what I'm talking about. And so once they understand that, and I'm not going to take their things away, especially guys and girls do this too. Like, oh, I don't want to see her. She's going to tell me I can't eat my Oreos or I can't eat this. And I'm like, no, it's not about taking away. It's just about moderation and slowly fitting it in. But
Well, I was going to say, or she's going to make me eat that.
right,
Like if we take, let's
yeah,
go back to that cross country example of like a lot of lean runners who
yeah,
probably aren't hitting what they need to hit and
right.
going, what is she going to tell me I have to?
What do I have to eat? And I just say we need
Yeah.
to eat real food. I'm not kidding. When I walk you through a day, here's an example. And you're right. Some are fear, I'm going to take things away, or how in the world am I going to get to that level? Or, is that going to cause me to gain fat? That is in some people's minds. But what's nice is I have my science to back me up. If I show them their fuel in their muscle is depleted, I already won because I go, sorry, we're not fueling enough. And they start to understand it going, oh, I thought I'd be at 60 or 70% at least, because that's where I want them minimally to be. And you're at 20%. Oh, I guess I'm not fueling enough. So, and then when you have the testing, you can prove it to them what's happening. Plus, I need proof so I know how to veer what we need because it's not always perfect. Just the first time you go out of the gate, you got to tweak it. We all are different, and science is different for everybody. So when they hear that, you go small. I really try to keep it within the foods that they like. If I can, I might just rearrange it. For example, let's say someone loves Cocoa Puffs or Lucky Charms for breakfast. Let's say that. And I'm like, okay, so you like Cocoa Puffs or Lucky Charms for breakfast. And then I might go, gosh, my veggie blends are not here. Okay. So I might say, all right, give me a whirl on these veggie blends because they really are insanely great. I just let somebody try them up front. And I'm mad I don't have them behind me. So they are so good. And then they try them and they're like, oh, those are good. And I'm like, yeah, they have fruits and vegetables in them. And they're like, oh my gosh. Okay. So I'm already winning, right? I just go, well, could you eat these instead of those? What in the world did I just do? They're like, well, I like that. And way more fiber, less added sugar, more whole ingredients, and it has a purpose. And so there you go. I'm already winning this conversation because added sugar does not like to go into the muscle except around activity. And then if it's formulated right, so Gatorade or your sports will go into the muscle even when you're not active. But that does not mean I give it a free rein to go drink Gatorade or a sports drink whenever you want. It's just it is formulated different. But that's how I could walk someone through. Another example is, okay, how can I take them to the next step? They're to the veggie blends. And then I go, okay, do me a favor, buy a box of regular Cheerios. And I want you to put a half of your bowl of regular Cheerios and then half of the veggie blends. all right, well, regular Cheerios is insanely healthy because it's non-GMO and it has 4 or 5 grams of fiber and less than 1 gram of added sugar. It's oatmeal grinded down into an oat flour and baked. And 2-year-olds eat Cheerios and they're light on the stomach and they're easy to eat. And then they're like, oh, well, let's say they did 2 cups of cereal and 1 cup was regular Cheerios. Well, now that's 1 or less gram of added sugar and 5 grams of fiber. And the veggie blends has 9. The rest of the cereals out there have 12 with not a lot of value to them. And now 1 cup of the veggie blends, well, now I'm to 10 grams of added sugar versus 18. Or if you did honey nut, like 24, now I'm down to 8 or like 10 or 12, whatever the math is. And you're like, wow, that's too easy. And I'm like, yeah, because there's going to be a sweet bite no matter what. The top of your tongue is the only thing that tells you how great this stuff tastes. And then the parents going, well, this is too easy. And the kid's like, well, yeah, I can do that. Well, it's in the same aisle, or if you're shopping online, it's in the same, like you're right there with the cereal. You just have to like find it and you're done and nobody's fighting. And then you could get 3/4 regular Cheerios and then, 1/4. And now I got it down to 5. That's insanely healthy with little mess, right?
Right.
You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. I think for today's purpose, I think that my takeaway is tweaks. Like if parents can understand it's just tweaks, it's not overhauls, that's promising because I think a lot of people get very overwhelmed. Like I'm sure I'm doing everything wrong and it's overwhelming to think of switching out our whole kitchen. But nope, you're just giving an example, just a tweak. And this is where you work with athletes for, months and where a parent can hand over some of this and go, my kid will listen better to you. They can experiment in this environment. That I can already see parents' shoulders like, okay, that actually sounds lovely. And that's why I really wanted to give just this taste, today of like, it can feel like this with a Dawn Weatherwax. Like this exists out there. So I do want you to tell our community, you mentioned you have a program, like, do you work with people in your office, but virtually as well? Give us your whole options. Mm-hmm.
So I do see people in person. That's where I'm at right now in Liberty Township, Ohio, close to Cincinnati, if that gives other people landmarks. But we do metabolism testing. We do the muscle sound. We do the body comp. Again, muscle sound is the fuel in the muscle. Metabolism is just how much fuel you burn, and the body comp is bod pod, but it measures your body comp. But everybody, it's not just focusing on fat; it's focusing on leanness. How much lean do we need? As we get older, we could lose up to 2 pounds of lean weight a year. It's not just about weight; it's about maintaining the lean. That's what keeps your bones strong. That's what keeps you standing upright when you're 70. And what they do at this age 100% affects that future of theirs and their bone mass. And do the consult, do sodium testing. We do labs. Like I don't personally draw blood here, but I know places if I ask labs or doctors. If somebody doesn't see me here, which I have so many clients that I never see face to face, I can still work with people, Zoom, phone call, and we can get there. A lot of people are from bigger cities. They could do bod pod or body in body or DEXA, those measure body comp. Not as many people have metabolism testing, and that's okay. I like data, but I can still get someone there from distance. The third option is some people are just, I'm not ready for that. It's just like this. We're not going to spend the funds on that. Or maybe we don't have the funds because it really is one that we might want, but maybe the funds aren't quite there, even though we are, both you and I are dietitians. HSA, I'm covered, Flex, I'm covered. I do have a provider number, but I don't take insurance because a lot of my stuff isn't covered because they're healthy. They're like, what are you trying to do? I'm just trying to get them to fuel and grow better or optimal, but that's not usually a code on insurance. So it's not usually covered. But I do have an academy. It's called Dawn Weatherwax's Sports Nutrition Academy. I call it a pre-launch because 2 years ago I launched it, but there's so much that needs to be added to it. There's
Always.
spelling errors, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? There's things, but it's what I do in the office. It's all there. So if you have like, I want my athlete to gain muscle, I have a gain weight, get leaner program. If I want to run fast, right now I have a want to run faster, but it's just taking the courses. And that way you could do it on your own time and your own space. And you can always ask me questions throughout that. And that's like $149 a year right now. It's insane. Like cheap. I only do a 7-day back guarantee, but just because I'm like, you're either going to know, you can't change something in a month. It's a process over time, but you can always ask me questions in there, and then you're not on the journey by yourself. And you're like most people, it's slow and, slow, but, slow and go, you're moving forward and you'll still be successful. It's when you don't do anything and you just go, I can't do it. It's too much. I'm like, no, we can figure this out. You just, budgets are in there. Okay, Cheerios is cheap. That is one cereal that I know, and every school should have regular Cheerios. That shouldn't be an issue. That is approved. And they can mix it with the honey Cheerios because they call them honey Cheerios. Honey Nut Cheerios, just so everybody knows, doesn't have nuts in it. They took them out a long time ago, but makes people feel better if it doesn't have the word nut on it. But it doesn't sell well if you take nut out of it, right? For everybody else. Because it's like the second top selling cereal, I think, in the United States. I don't know. It's somewhere up there. I'll probably get in trouble for that because I don't even, maybe it's third. But you see them going, that's Academy, and you can do it anywhere at any place. You can do tape measurements to do body comp. You calculate your fuel needs. So if somebody just wants me in their life to ask questions, but do it on their own time, then that is available. And it's, my fee for an hour, and I'm still cheaper than most, is $150 an hour. I just have a hard time. I came from a blue collar family that went from poor to middle class, but with insane hard work from my parents. So it's almost impossible to move up a class. And I probably won't raise my prices, even though I probably should charge $250 an hour because that's what the going rate is. I charge $150 an hour. So
no, you make yourself available and tangible, like you said, for people who would normally be like listening to you going, she's probably $2,000 or $5,000 for a course.
And I probably could.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing cost into it because then all of a sudden, again, it goes, okay, parents will pay for a personal trainer. They'll pay for the nutrition piece, though it's not new. It's newer in a sense that like we're understanding that that's another really valuable resource that if handed off to a professional, that we just get places quicker. It's not that the information's not out there and that we couldn't research it and all that. It's the hand holding through it and taking away the decision fatigue and having somebody be like, I've been there, I've seen this, and this is how we navigate it, that becomes priceless. And the tools and the fun that you probably bring to the table too, because you have this energy about you, which I love. I feel like I do need to ask one last thing before we wrap up here, because kind of tongue in cheek, as parents going, oh, my athlete's probably fine. How many people walk through your door and go through all of your tests and processes and are fine and are matching those nutrient needs?
Oh man, hardly ever. I don't know if I'm matching my nutrient needs.
That's right. Yeah.
Like my multivitamin makes up for that, right? The journey is, I think it's gotten worse in the United States. It's definitely not gotten better because of so much more processed foods. And therefore, I'm just going to give you one example. I had an athlete who all he did was eat out. I don't have that very often. And he actually logged on an app called Chronometer because I love that app. It's free. You could even be 12 and use it. Again, it's for guidelines, not for obsessiveness or, bad, good. But he was eating like hamburgers and all this stuff. It was all fast food. And then I go to look at his iron content. And you know what? He still did not meet his iron needs when he was eating out. I mean, I'm talking like hamburgers, but it was like Steak and Shake and stuff. All these places did not even 5,500 units later, did not even meet 100% of the nutrients. If that doesn't tell you something, nothing else will. it blew me away. I go, oh my gosh, you still don't get enough iron. And that's just tells you the quality of what's not in that food. And
right. And you're talking about a male, right? And we have females who actually lose iron. And how many parents, I mean, unless I was a dietitian, I literally like push across the script at appointments and I'm like, can we get these things tested? And sometimes get the eye roll, where I'm like, somebody who doesn't come in with that background, like, why would they ever think to ask more? Or so just, I appreciate even from your standpoint of being like, hey, we should really get these labs drawn. It's just good baselines to understand. And as we progress through our sport, what are our watch outs? What nutrients do we see drop kind of easily and to protect our bone mass, to protect? So I don't know. I just appreciate you digging on all that. Yeah. And so I could talk to you forever.
No. And because you said that, and if they ask real quick, because I know we're over, but you do want to get your ferritin checked, right? If you were going into a doctor's lab, you do want to get a vitamin D checked. You do, like at least ferritin, that's stored iron, vitamin D, B12, folate, magnesium. These are easy ones. Ferritin, they fight you on, but 33% of athletes have low ferritin, and that's not just athletes. So it's just stored iron. But yeah, labs are needed. I love how you put that out there. You do get an eye roll but they don't do it right away. And that's okay. But if I see some things where we up the fuel and they're still tired, I go, then something else is wrong. That we should turn it around pretty quickly. And if not, then I really push labs. So.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, if you had this opportunity to wrap your arms around all the parents and the athletes, and you're like, if you heard nothing else out of today, what would be your kind of one takeaway that you hope and pray? Just hear this, and it's our starting point.
I have to take a deep breath and process that question. One thing is that food literally is their lifeline and will 100% impact their future.
That's
how I would pronounce that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so 100%. Simple and so impactful. You're amazing. Thank you.
So. Too much to say. I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? I was alive. But there I go. Yeah.
No, you summarized that in a one-liner. I'm super.
I tried.
Oh, so good. Okay. So again, everything will go in the show notes as we wrap up today in case people couldn't take notes fast enough. All your info will be in there so they can reach out to you.
You're awesome, man.
And just thank you. Thank you for your time and your energy today. Much appreciated.
Yeah. And thanks for having me. And sorry I was late. I had 2 boys in here and I went over. So they actually drove themselves here. It was crazy. So yeah.